So it's a little confusing as to what's going on in Help Wanted 2, and it confuses and frightens me.
Ladies, gentlemen, and those with the good sense to do away with the whole notion, I welcome you to the premier audio medium for all your Fazbear entertainment needs. The Freddy Fazbear Pizza Podcast. Note, FFPP is not responsible for any loss of appetite, disinterest, dismemberment, or other legally classified statuses. So strap in and enjoy.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Freddy Fazbear Pizza Podcast. I'm your host of the Toast here, Rytoast, to talk about Five Nights at Freddy's, as we always do. I don't know how to address this. I guess trigger warning for pet death. If that's something you don't want to listen to or can't, skip ahead to the next chapter when I won't bring it up. But I'm sure you've seen my community post or Twitter post, but in case you haven't, just want to clear the air on why streams aren't happening this week. Those of you know I've got Mark right here. He's right here. He's right. And Casey, and those are the cats you see on the channel. I do have a third cat you don't see on the channel often. Her name is April. She was a rescue that we've had for about 6 years, and in her sleep, out of nowhere, she passed away on Sunday. I'm recording this Tuesday afternoon. We found her Sunday morning. So, you know, probably no streams this week, maybe Friday. Kind of just, we're in that stage of grief right now where we're trying to get back to normal, you know? But everyone's been incredibly kind, and I can't thank you enough for that. Yeah, it's just, it was so sudden, you know? It's just, you know, she's 6, pretty young. Oh my God, Casey. Knocking over Casey and Mark are still keeping us vigilant. Don't worry. Almost knocked over my monitor. And it's like every other time a pet has died in my life, they'd been old. They'd been sick. We knew. We were ready. We got ourselves ready. And it was still sad. But we were ready for it, you know? And this is just something that we just weren't ready for. Something we didn't even consider yet. But we're just trying to take solace that when we found her, she was curled up asleep in her favorite spot. But yeah, I just wanted to say that here because I assume most of you who watch the live streams watch the podcast, and hopefully, I'm just going to say this now, I really don't want to talk about it on a live stream. It's part of the reason why I'm sharing this here and now. So I can get my thoughts out there. I can talk about it here, in a medium that I can edit out segments that I have to. You know, I don't want to talk about this while live on camera, at least not now. But yeah, I think I'm in that stage right now where I just want to try to get to normal as I can. And, you know, keep going. So, yeah, let's talk about Five Nights at Freddy's. I assume we're pretty much just going to continue on with the timeline. I haven't been able to schedule some guest episodes that I want to, because, as always, life has been very hectic. So, we're going to continue on planning my own timeline. We recently did Cassie and Cassie's dad. We're pretty much officially in the new era of Fazbears. Part of me wants to do a mimic. Yeah, fuck it. Let's do the mimic. Let's do the mimic before we have any Secret of the Mimic information. The only thing we know is that the date 1979 is important for some reason. So the thing that's fucking me up is that there's a contradiction that I'm sure Secret of the Mimic is going to help us out with. With the introduction of Tiger Rock and Help Wanted 2 and all the other book connections, it really feels like the Tales from the Pizzaplex books are closer to truth than fiction. I'm right now, I think the most helpful position to be in is what I'm in right now, where right now I'm assuming that Tales from the Pizzaplex are fully in continuity until proven otherwise. Because that way I at least have information to work with, right? I'm not saying it's a guarantee. This could very well be a Silver Eye situation where, sure, William Afton, Henry Emily, these characters are introduced in the books by name first, and they do drastically different things in the books than they do the games, but that's how we get information on these characters. So I think it is fully possible that we're getting that situation again with Tales from the Pizzaplex. But I don't know yet, So I think right now, until Secret of the Mimic proves otherwise, I'm going to assume that the Tales from the Pizzaplex books are mostly canon, and we can move from there. I just realized I never checked if my pa is really popping, so if it is, I do apologize. Now that I've started recording, I really can't find out. It sounds good in my own ears, but I don't know if it's going to sound good for you, so I apologize. So if we're assuming, and there is a contradiction that comes up assuming the books are in continuity, and that is Henry, Emily, or Edwin making the Fazbear Animatronics. Henry Emily in FNAF 6 pretty much directly states prisons of my making, which everyone interprets as I made the Freddy Fazbear line of animatronics, right? Freddy, Chica, Bonnie, Foxy. Prisons of his making. And the Silver Eyes doubles down on that, where Henry is the mechanical genius and William is more of the character guy. So we get into Tales from the Pizzaplex, and now we have a problem, because in the Mimic, Edwin is hired by Fazbear to take these mascot suits that are sent to him and turn them into animatronics. And he's working on Chica during the story, The Mimic. So at first, it was like, okay, this is probably taking place somewhere in the 80s, and they hired Edwin to make extra copies of the animatronics, because we know, as of FNAF 1, there are multiple versions of these animatronics. There's a couple Freddy exoskeletons, a couple Bonnie exoskeletons. So, they have extras, not to mention if there's other restaurants. So that was the assumption. But then Secret of the Mimic comes out and gives us the date 1979. And if the Mimic was created in 1979, that would have to mean it was created before the first Freddy Fazbear's Pizza existed. Now, they could have already been working on Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, as we see in the, what little footage we got surrounding the Secret of the Mimic teasers at PAX West. One of them included a Freddy Fazbear's Pizza poster with coming soon on it. So they're working on Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. The problem comes into the fact that if the story The Mimic is true to the games, and the game's timeline is telling us 1979, then this is essentially telling us Edwin originally created the Freddy Fazbear animatronics, right? Because he's actively building Chica while he creates the Mimic, which would have been in 1979, which would have been the first line of Freddy Fazbear animatronics. So suddenly, they aren't prisons of Henry's making anymore. So we have a huge contradiction here. But like I said, as far as useful information from the books, I think it makes the most sense to assume the books are in continuity unless a direct contradiction appears, and then slot that contradiction in, essentially. So because that's the only contradiction we have so far, what my brain is telling me makes the most sense with the information we have in front of us is the Mimic is true, but Edwin wasn't making the animatronics, right? I'm always going to trust the games first. My order of operations for what I trust most is newest games, oldest games, books. That's my order of operations. So if Secret of the Mimic comes out and shows us Edwin made the Fazbear animatronics, okay, FNAF 6, that line is no longer trustworthy. This is the new information we have. But until that does, the best information we have is from the older games, FNAF 6, where Henry's I made these prisons. So that supersedes the book information. So the Mimic, 1979, created by Edwin. And then similarly, within the year, David dies. My name is David. Dad, I want an ice cream. And Edwin's grief causes him to beat the mimic silly. I'm saying this now, completely out of context, but I forgot to mention this, and if I don't mention it now, I'm going to forget. I made a Red Note account. Not saying you should. For those of you who don't know, TikTok might be banned on the 19th. We're not sure. The Supreme Court can delay it. And, you know, a lot of people usually assume nothing happens because nothing happens most of the time. But in the event that TikTok is banned, people are looking for alternatives. Obviously, I think most people are just going to go to like Instagram Reels and YouTube Shorts. But almost as a petty fuck you to the United States government, who's banning a Singaporean app for the fear of its connections to the Chinese Communist Party. Yeah, the U.S. is really dumb. Freedom of speech violation, by the way. As kind of a fuck you to that, a lot of people are joining Red Note, or I'm going to butcher this. I haven't practiced at all. XiaoHongShu, I think it is, which translates to Little Red Book. It's essentially, it's been explained to me that it's like kind of like a Instagram or a Pinterest more than it is TikTok, but a lot of people have been calling it Chinese TikTok. And it is a Chinese app. Little Red Book, I'm gonna do it one more time. I gotta practice this. XiaoHongShu is it translates to Little Red Book. So I mean, you know, but I made an account. If you want to follow me over there, it's just Rytoast. It's got the little plushie. I'll probably post a video sometime today so you can like have proof that it's actually me and not like just some random person. But yeah, it's been such an interesting experience over there because like it's a big, right now, this moment, it's a really big mesh of culture because there's a lot of like Chinese and Mandarin and there's a lot of like Chinese and like Malaysian people that I've seen on this app being like, holy shit, where'd all these Americans come from? And a lot of Americans doing their best to be like, hi, everybody. Please let us be here. It sucks right now that we're getting kicked off of TikTok. So hello. And it's just like Western and Eastern memes just like crossing the streams. It's a really interesting cultural moment right now. So I've been having a lot of fun on there. I don't know if it's gonna keep up in the West or not, but it's been fun so far. Anyway, I figured I'd mention that now. Because I wanted to, if my week went better, that would have been the intro for the podcast, but I needed to talk about other things that happened this week. Anyway, the Mimic. So we have, it gets brutalized by Edwin, and Edwin kind of goes MIA. We don't know. I really hope Secret of the Mimic tells us what happens to Edwin between then and now. But we have this weird, we have unknowable gap area, and then in Questionmarkville, Fazbear reclaims the Mimic. And I was thinking about what happened with the Mimic, right? Because like we don't really know. The books tell us that Fazbear made an entire line of Mimic endoskeletons, but stopped using them when they copied humans in unexpected ways. So I was thinking about like, what does that mean? And I was kind of linking it to the Help Wanted 2 update because there's something that a lot of people haven't been talking about as far as I'm aware. Because everyone's been talking about the house and Mexus in the van and the puzzle, right? And the White Tiger plushie, and Jackie, which all of that, super important things to talk about. But what I think is probably really important, and I think I know where this whole Secret of the Mimic plotline is going to go, in the Help Wanted 2 update, to unlock the puzzle, to learn all of this, you have to throw something at the Mimic. To which Mystic Hippo even says tomatoes are in short supply. And she mentions like it's a performer on stage. And then when you do, the Mimic lets out this like cry, and then you can start collecting puzzle pieces. So I'm wondering if the story of the Mimic from the books isn't one-to-one with the games, but a similar thing happens where the Mimic is created for a use, and something tragic happens, it retaliates, it's put away. And it just festers on that, right? Because I wonder if the Mimic was performing at Fall Fest and someone, probably some kid, starts booing and starts throwing shit at the Mimic, to which it goes down, grabs the kid, and accidentally kills it. I wonder if that's the inciting incident. Now the Mimic's too dangerous, it's put away forever, and we find it in security breach. And it's this thing that's just been festering on that anger ever since. I kind of think that might be where this is going. Which would be really, it would be a fucked connection. Henry Emily has 2 kids in the books. One of them is Sammy. He survives, and his wife kind of leaves him and takes Sammy once he goes crazy about the death of Charlie. Henry's a wound first inflicted on me. Have we considered, what if Sammy was killed at Fall Fest by the Mimic? There's one thing that doesn't add up with this, and that's the fire, right? Because it definitely seems like there was a fire at Fall Fest. So maybe that's more accurate to say. Like maybe someone threw something at the Mimic, it starts freaking out, and it accidentally starts a fire that kills people. And that's why it's put away. That's probably more likely. So I'm going to just take my shot. While performing at Fall Fest, the Mimic is booed and jeered at, and it confuses or angers the Mimic in some way that it accidentally starts a fire, creating the Fall Fest tragedy. So it does the Fall Fest. It gets locked away for that. Yeah, like it does the Fall Fest fire. I'm thinking very like Stitch on the beach, or like very Young Frankenstein at the performance, where like it's going well until it's doesn't, but I genuinely think that throwing something at the Mimic to start the puzzle is more important than people have been giving credit for so far. I still don't know where the hell Jackie fits into all of this. Jackie is such a question mark to me, because like I don't even think the Mimic could fit in there. Well, I mean, the Mimic can change its body to fit into anything, but the Jackie that we've been seeing, I don't think is the Mimic. So like what is the deal with Jackie? That's my big question right now. But after the Fall Fest fire, it's locked away for being too dangerous. Cut forward like 50 years. Fazbear's like, I genuinely think a lot up until Glitchtrap gets a hold of the Fazbear systems, I genuinely think that it's just corporate greed. So we get to Help Wanted. And Mr. Burroughs, or whoever you think is the CEO, is trying to clean up the image of Fazbear. So they're like, we'll have somebody else make games that are just one-to-one with what happened. So when people try to look up and research what happened, all they can find is these games. So they hire Steve Snodgrass. They have him make FNAF 1 through 6. And then they make a game about it. So they make Help Wanted. Right. And I do think it's FNAF 1 through 6. Because Ennard is in Help Wanted, who would only make sense to be there if sister location is a game. And not only do we have the Scrap Baby plushes in hard mode Help Wanted, but in, I forget which one, but one of the Tales from the Pizzaplex stories, Freddy Fazbear Pizzeria Simulator is mentioned like pretty much by name. I think it says like Pizzeria Simulator or something like that when referencing Mr. Hippo. So like, FNAF 6 is real too. Like it is a real game. And again, I want to be super 1,000 times % clear. When I say that the FNAF games are in-universe games, I'm not saying the information from the FNAF games is incorrect inherently. What makes the most sense with what we have in front of us is it's Scott and Steelwold telling us, hey, FNAF 1 through 6... technically, for this argument, I would say FNAF 1 through 7, including FNAF World. These games are accurate to what happened in the FNAF timeline, unless we say so. Like, moving forward, if we present new information that directly contradicts something from the old games, trust the new stuff first. But Help Wanted does two things at the same time, and I always want to be clear about this because a lot of people got the wrong idea. Help Wanted does two things at the same time. It one says, hey, some indie dev made games about what happened, made games about Fazbear Entertainment, and those are the games you've played. And two, these games are exactly what had happened, and they're using it to cover it up. So that's what they're saying, and I always want to be clear about that. Granted, that goes against the Tales of the Pizza Plex story, Help Wanted, which definitely leans into Steve Snodgrass not knowing anything, but, the books aren't 100% probably. Anyway, so all that to say, Help Wanted comes around, and they're trying to make light of all these games and accusations by making a VR game. And trying to save money, they go, okay, let's just pool all of the resources we have in this company. What do we have? Well, we have a lot of broken animatronics. Do we have any good programming? Well, sir, there is this endoskeleton that, it hasn't been used for a while, but it's said that it's a AI program that can just teach itself. Perfect. Send it to them to scan it into the systems. But, sir, you should know that it was involved in a pretty horrific accident. Take it back once they're done with it. Okay, sir. So, Help Wanted, the Mimic program is scanned into the game. So I'll say Mimic 1. Because we have to be clear about this. This program needs to exist separately from the endoskeleton before it's locked away. Because by the time of Help Wanted, FNAF 6 is inaccessible. FNAF 6 is accessible by security breach from being dug down to through construction. Right? And we know this because Glamrock Freddy is like, she made me clear the path, which tells us that Vanny had to dig to FNAF 6, which means Vanny was already active by the time they get to FNAF 6. So if the original Mimic endoskeleton is locked in the basement of FNAF 6, that can't be where the Mimic 1 program was sourced. It is a separate program. Now, granted, still the Mimic 1 program, but it's a different iteration. Which does beg the question, which one gets scanned into Help Wanted? We have no information on that. But at this point, the Mimic 1 program is scanned into Help Wanted. In there, it's trained on all Fazbear data ever, and basically becomes Glitch Trap, which I think explains the plush Spring Bonnie suit incredibly well. Because if the Mimic 1 program was originally made around Fall Fest times, that is what it would know best. It would know those plush suits the best. So what I think probably happened here is we have a program that all it really knows is observe my surroundings and replicate it. And it was made during the times of Fall Fest where they were still using these felt suits instead of animatronics. So then we take that base program and we put it into a game that's basically a montage of Fazbear Entertainment's worst moments. So it kind of adopts this persona of William Afton, and when it thinks of what it knows of William Afton, it knows about Spring Bonnie. So it creates that plush felt suit that it would have known back in 1979. So that's how we get this Glitch Trap persona. And now it's like, okay, well, William Afton killed kids and studied Remnant, so now it's my turn. That's what I'm going to do since I am William Afton. Spelled like W17714M 4FT0N, or I guess no, 4F70N. Does L have elite speak? I guess it's just L. So I'm gonna write that down because I actually like that. Instead of Glitch Trap, it's W1LL14M 4F70N. William Afton, spelled in leet speak. What if I made that the cold open and it's just me going W1LL14M 4F70N? People are like, what the fuck is going on? So now that it's forming its persona, it needs to get out so it can do stuff. So tries to get out with Jeremy, fails. Tries to escape through Vanessa, succeeds. I can't spell succeeds to save my life, brother. Holy shit. I wrote Succeeds. I've got an English degree. Okay. Holy. Anyway. It was one of those things where, like, as I'm writing the word, I'm like, wait, how do I spell this? Screw it. I'll just write whatever. And that came out. Now, out of Help Wanted, Vanessa uploads him to the Pizzaplex in some way. So at this point, we get into the storyteller territory from Tales from the Pizzaplex, where the Mimic One program, or Glitch Trap, this iteration of it, is uploaded to the Pizzaplex and is beginning to take over everything. And it's at this point where it kind of needs to take over the CEO role. It's incredibly important for it to do that. So it can get Vanessa hired, it can make shift adjustments, it can fire or get rid of employees. Tales from the Pizzaplex offers the explanation that the current chair of the board basically gets tricked into its airtight sealed chamber, and the guy dies. And once he's dead, I mean, it could just take over emails, right? Like, it seems like a lot of the management of Fazbear Entertainment as of Security Breach is done through email, which is kind of the excuse I think they have for how Glitch Trap can puppeteer the entire company. Of, oh, well, no one's going to actually check in on the CEO, so as long as I'm sending out emails and making it seem like they're still alive, I can pretend to be them. So, begins overriding protocols, becomes CEO, gets Vanessa hired as the only security guard. And he has a very special job for Vanessa, but I'm not going to say what that is right now, because that's what Friday's video is about. And spoilers, it's another theory review. I didn't mean to do 2 back-to-back, but another person came out with a banger that I just kind of believe, so we're going to have to talk about that on Friday. But it has to do with Vanessa's role in Security Breach, and also as a teaser, the Scooper. So I will, I'll leave it at that, but, I'm technically doing 2 theory reviews back to back just because of the way that they came out. It's one of those things where, like, I could always wait a week so they're not back to back, but we're getting closer and closer to Poppy Playtime Chapter 4, and then we're going to be doing more Secret of the Mimic stuff. So it's one of those things where I'm like, it's an now or never kind of deal. But at some point, we got to talk about Help Wanted 2. So, Help Wanted 2 is still so confusing. Because in one ending, Glitch Trap is seemingly brought to life, and in the other ending, Glitch Trap is crushed by Vanny, who's supposed to be his, like, number 1. She's his ride or die. So it's a little confusing as to what's going on in Help Wanted 2, and it confuses and frightens me. So I'm going to assume. See, I really want to just assume that scene is Vanny taking the bit of Glitch Trap that was inside of Cassie's dad and destroying it so she can take over his mind instead. And I want to believe that. But the problem is, fucking J-Top in the Steel Wool interview with John FNAF basically said that's the end of Glitch Trap. He was like, yeah, and Glitch Trap gets crushed. And John was like, that's the end of Glitch Trap? And he goes, squish, bye-bye. So, like, but for my own sanity, until proven otherwise, I'm going to assume that in that ending, Vanny is destroying the bit of Glitch Trap inside of Cassie's dad's mind to take over his mind, and then she, as Cassie's dad, does the rest of Help Wanted 2 to create Glitch Trap. That's the only way that I can square this away in my brain, to, like, manifest Glitch Trap in some way. So, Help Wanted 2, Vanny captures Jeremy and uses him to manifest Glitch Trap, who then sets its sight on Cassie. So, Ruin, Cassie gets infected by Glitch Trap while freeing the physical mimic, and now they're both out and about. Technically, I think she's infected by Vanny, but Vanny is kind of a branch of Glitch Trap. We'll get there when we do Vanessa. Whew, the mimic so far has been this whole episode, which is a little crazy. But he's got a lot of context. I don't know how deep we're in. It's the problem with these timeline videos is that a lot of the recording time is me writing stuff down. So I'll be like, oh, we've been recording for 50 minutes and it's like 20 minutes of footage so far. It seems like we're approaching 30 minutes on a rough estimate. So we'll do one more character and then we'll do questions. So that way we don't have another like 30-minute podcast episode. Hey, that's some good news. I'm not sick anymore. Yeah, it turns out everyone got a cold, but my cold, because my immune system was so shit from lack of sleep and lack of sunlight and lack of proper vitamins, was I got an ear infection because of the cold, so I had to deal with that. But I'm on antibiotics. The infection's pretty much gone. I've just got some mucus in the morning now, and I think that's pretty normal. I'm taking vitamins, and I'm eating better, and I'm trying to sleep more. But, 2 kids and being a YouTuber, I don't sleep a lot. Anyway, who should we do? Let's do Gregory. Why not? Because Vanny, I want to save until after Friday's video, like Vanessa Vanny. So let's do Gregory. Gregory is a normal kid for the most part. And then we've got the in-between help wanted and security breach times. So a lot of Gregory's story happens outside of the game, and we get a hint to this in GGY and Tales from the Pizzaplex. But I genuinely think the way the Mimic is operating, it likes having a killer and a bait, where it likes having someone who does the killing, a killer, and someone who can lure in victims, the bait. After Ruin, I think Cassie is going to be the bait, and the Mimic endoskeleton is going to be the killer. Cassie lures a kid or an adult or whoever to some back room, and the Mimic kills them. I think what was happening before Security Breach, and the reason Gregory was selected to help Glitchtrap, as GGY from Tales from the Pizzaplex tells us, I think Gregory was the bait. He was the kid luring victims in, and Vanny was using the Glamrock animatronics to get rid of them. So here's what I think Gregory's timeline looks like. Gregory's a normal kid. And then some point between Help Wanted and Security Breach, the Pizzaplex is built. And Gregory is a huge Freddy's fan. He's there all the time, and he loves the arcade. He is playing those arcade games as much as he can. And then one day, a white rabbit character appears to him, someone he doesn't recognize, and she says, "Hey kid, you're pretty good at that. I bet your scores would be even better if you played with this mask," and hands him the VANNI mask, the Vanny mask, the modified one that Cassie gets in Ruin. So VIP, the Choose Your Own Adventure, interactive novel FNAF book set in the Pizzaplex, tells us about the MOE. Oh God. What is that? What does MOE stand for again? I gotta look it up. It's something like something experience, like something overload experience. Max occupancy experience. It's in the story, it's a virtual headset in the form of Glamrock Freddy's head that you put on, and there's wires and circuits and stuff, but if you turn it on, you basically get to visit a virtual version of the Pizzaplex, and you can do all the attractions, but it's all in this virtual space. Sound familiar? AR mask? But the whole point of it is when you put on the mask, all points you get are times 10. And at some point in VIP, to unlock the best ending, you have to, while wearing the MOE headset, put another MOE headset on, which then times it by 10 again, so all points you get are multiplied by 100. And that's how you get this secret ending. So I think the MOE, and this was brought up in a recent podcast, that was recent suggestion brought this up. The MOE is a modified version of the Vanny, or the Vanny mask is a modified version of the MOE. It's a augmented reality mask that lets you visit attractions that aren't even here yet, but also it gives you that point multiplier. So Vanny gives him this mask and says like, "Hey, Go ahead, put this on. It'll help you score better scores. And he does. Gregory, as GGY, starts topping every arcade machine, and he uses this mask so much that the Mimic gets its hands on him. And that is when he turns into Dr. Rabbit, GGY, a peon of Glitchtrap. Just like Vanny is to Vanessa, GGY is to Gregory. And now, up until Security Breach, this is his role. He's the coder, the programmer. As we hear in these therapy tapes, if you believe patient 46 is Gregory, then, or I guess in that sense, Dr. Rabbit, then he's the tech whiz who's able to program things and change and, all that nonsense. In the story GGY, someone found out that the coding of the animatronics had been tampered with and changed, and as if a signature, G's and Y's were riddled throughout the code. And we know in GGY that anytime someone's looking into Gregory, Glamrock Freddy stares daggers at them, to the point where Glamrock Freddy is like almost threatening them with how aggressively he's staring at the one kid investigating Gregory. So I think Gregory, as GGY, modifies the program of the animatronics to protect himself. Basically, like, I am an agent of Glitchtrap, and so that I can do his will, I will have these animatronics watch over me and protect me so I can enact the thing Glitchtrap wants me to without getting into too much danger. And he's the bait. He is the kid who finds other kids and goes, hey, I've got an awesome backstage access with this mask. Come follow me. I'll show you. You'll get to hang out with Glamrock Freddy. That kid gets killed. Comes up to an adult. Hey, mister, I'm a little lost. My mom went back into this back room. Can you help me? Brings him back, gets killed. And this just keeps happening through up until Security Breach. And then at the beginning of Security Breach, somebody beats Balloon Boy's World, or Balloon World, or whatever it's called. The daycare arcade machine that you can find the Sun and Moon glitch in. Someone beats that and frees Gregory. Gregory's mind is unlocked from Glitchtrap's hold on it. Similar to Vanessa when we play Princess Quest 3. But Gregory was still inside of Freddy when that happened. He was just biding his time, waiting for his next mission from Glitchtrap, waiting inside of Glamrock Freddy. And it's in the middle of a performance. Gregory's confused as all hell, but just waiting there to get out and see what's going on. But it's in that moment that Glitchtrap notices that Gregory's no longer in his hold anymore. Gregory's free. We have to go get that boy. He knows too much. Either we retrain him or we kill him. So he sends out the order to all the animatronics, find Gregory, capture him. But Glamrock Freddy has been modified by Gregory to protect Gregory. Glamrock Freddy's programming is protect this kid. So now he gets conflicting signals, where his programming says protect Gregory, and a new command says find, kidnap, and bring in Gregory. These conflict mid-performance. He shorts out on stage. He reboots in safe mode, flushing out any changes to his programming or added programs, which would flush out not only the Gregory modifications, but the Glitchtrap virus. And now it's just Glamrock Freddy, who has a strange boy in his chest. A strange boy who is barely regaining his memories. And that's the beginning of Security Breach. So now we get Security Breach, where both Gregory and Freddy, who were just recently freed of Glitchtrap's influence, are starting to remember more and more of what's going on. Starting to remember the things they were doing under Glitchtrap's control, which is why almost seemingly out of nowhere, by the end of the game, Gregory's like, kids are going to keep missing if I leave. Because now he remembers he was a part of it, but they didn't stop the source. So they free Vanessa on the way out, hoping that that effectively shuts down whatever is doing all of this, and they leave with the Princess Quest Good Vanny ending. And after that, him, Vanessa, and the remainder of Freddy's programming stored inside of his head begin to look into Fazbear and look into the Pizzaplex and try to find a way to stop this. And that's where we kind of leave his story, because at this point, we're waiting for the game that comes after Ruin sequentially. I'm really confident in this timeline for Gregory, and I might make a whole video on it. I'm not sure yet, but I'm really confident in that interpretation. The recording's at 55 minutes. Again, there's like 20 to 30 minutes of gaps. I think we're safe to do questions, so we're going to switch over to questions. If you want your questions answered on the podcast, you can send them in to Freddy Fazbear Pizza Podcast at gmail.com. That's in the description, copy and paste, because it's a pain to type out. Our first question, and I do this one first immediately after Gregory on purpose, is from Gavin, they, them. If the story GGY confirms that Gregory was like Vanessa at some point, it was freed. Where do you think the Dr. Rabbit persona went? Thank you for your question, Gavin. It's something that I've never really brought up. So, Vanny and Vanessa, I think that B7, the Tales from the Pizza Box story, is giving us enough evidence to show that if a persona is created within someone's mind, it can be removed from that host and still exist. And I think it explains how Vanessa is no longer Vanny by the end of Security Breach, but there's still Vanny graffiti in the Pizzaplex that is created after Security Breach, because Vanny takes a new host and begins making that graffiti. So Gavin raises a very interesting point. If Vanny being freed from Vanessa didn't destroy the Vanny persona, but instead removed it from Vanessa, and now that Vanny persona is looking for a new host, if Gregory was Dr. Rabbit at some point, and Gregory was freed, where's the Dr. Rabbit persona? And I think it's at this point that we finally have an answer for the way that Helpy acts with the Mimic in Ruin. I think Helpy is Dr. Rabbit, and I think Vanny is Vanny. What I mean by this, Help Wanted 2 and Ruin, Helpy is changed, and Helpy is actively trying to help the Mimic. In Ruin, it's tricking Cassie into going deeper and deeper into the facility to free the physical Mimic, and in Help Wanted 2, it's egging on the player to complete the proper tasks to create Glitch Trap, and it even gets angry with you if you don't listen to it. In the Help Wanted 2 Candy Cadet story, there's the woman who faces the witch, escapes with a scar, comes back many years later to once again best the witch this time. And a little boy says, "Come rest in my house first." And the witch catches the little boy was in on it, essentially. Multiple people have pointed out that little boy is likely Helpy. It's this small creature being like, "Hey, I'll help you. Just follow me," and leading them right into a trap. What if that's more accurate than we thought? What if that little boy is the Dr. Rabbit persona as Helpy? I think this makes a lot of sense. I think the Vanny persona is looking for a host, and the Dr. Rabbit persona is still acting as the bait, but now it's acting as Helpy, not just a human boy. Frankly, as much as I think Vanny is going to be inputted into Cassie's mind, I think it's incredibly possible that the ending of Help Wanted 2, where Vanny destroys Glitch Trap, what it might be showing us is that the Vanny persona is going to occupy the Mimic endoskeleton, and the Dr. Rabbit persona is going to occupy Cassie, therefore being the same villains as before Security Breach, but in new bodies. I think that's completely possible, but I don't know yet, and we won't know until likely after Secret of the Mimic, not from the Secret of the Mimic, but the game that comes after it. But those are just some thoughts. Thank you for your question, Gavin. Our next one comes from Zinny Dragon, she, her. For Poppy Playtime Chapter 4, we've gotten trailers for Yarnaby and Pianosaurus. Do you think both of them are going to be the main monsters? Or do you think one will be the main monster and the other will be a side character, like Miss Delight was in Chapter 3? If you only think one will be the big bad, which one? Thank you for your question. I think what makes the most sense for Chapter 4 is that Yarnaby is going to be the main antagonist. Pianosaurus is going to be a side antagonist, along with the nightmare critters. And I think, like Chapter 3, there's probably one antagonist we have not seen yet that will appear. Because if you remember, Miss Delight was not teased at all. Miss Delight was a complete surprise in Chapter 3. We never saw her before. And I would not doubt if they're going to do the same thing for Chapter 4, because that was obviously effective marketing. But there's something else to keep in mind, and that is the Doctor, Harley Sawyer. The most recent trailer we got for Poppy Playtime Chapter 4 seems to be Harley Sawyer himself talking to us, which is strange because I thought anytime we heard Harley Sawyer's voice, it was the prototype mimicking it, because we know the prototype can. We hear that in the last tape of Chapter 3. But it seems like it legitimately is Harley Sawyer's consciousness surviving all of this time and still doing stuff, and the prototype is a separate entity. That seems likely, and it makes sense. But if that's true, Harley Sawyer is likely the main antagonist, and it's not the prototype. That's my thinking. That might not even be Chapter 4. I think there's going to be 6 chapters. I've said this before on a short and my last Poppy Playtime theory, when we got the one trailer for Yarnaby. I think there's going to be 6 chapters. We've had 3 so far, where the toys are made, like the regular toys are made, where the children are examined, and then where the children are held. And Chapter 4 is where the experiments are held. I think that means 3 to 4 is our inflection point, where we have toys are made, children are examined, children are held. Experiments are held, experiments are examined, experiments are made. I think that's the order. So I think Chapter 4's main antagonist will be Yarnaby. We'll get more information from the Doctor. And likely, the Doctor will be Chapter 6's main antagonist, and the prototype probably Chapter 5. Or the prototype will join us for Chapter 6. I'm really not sure. It's just interesting that, like, the prototype is this big... we think the prototype is this big, major villain that we have to go and get to him. But the prototype's been with us this whole time. It was with us in Chapter 2. It was with us in Chapter 3. We don't have to go to the prototype. The prototype is with us, you know? Those are my thoughts. Thank you for your question. Our next one comes from Alex, they, them. I've been hearing a lot about the books being canon / not canon, etc. But I was wondering, how do we discern which stories are canon and not? I find it hard to believe that some of the Tales books are canon due to the fact that a lot of them would have caused the Pizzaplex to shut down. And also pregnant with Springtrap. Yeah. So I think the best way to look at this is Fazbear Frights. Because that's already been decided. Fazbear Frights has some wacky stories that some of them involve the end of the world. Sea Bonnies would likely be the end of the world because a kid like accidentally ingests a sea bonnie and it basically turns him into a mass of water and sea bonnies, which are basically sea monkeys. And I'm pretty sure, dies in the rain on the street near the sewer, which means those would go into the water system. So, like, everyone would start dying. So there are some Fazbear Frights that, like, those stories can't exist in the game's timeline. They must be a standalone. But luckily, people have already taken the time to figure out that in Fazbear Frights, the stories that directly connect to the Stitch Wraith epilogues, none of those stories involve the end of the world. Most of those stories are pretty possible to happen in the game's timeline. So there are some people who believe all the Fazbear Frights stories are within the game's timeline. Most people who believe Fazbear Frights are important to the timeline believe in what's called the Stitch Line games, which is the Stitch Wraith epilogues, the most important part of Fazbear Frights, and all of its connected stories. So Into the Pit, Fetch, To Be Beautiful, the stories that directly involve characters from the epilogues or the things that were collected in the epilogues. So if it's a story that directly connects to the Stitch Line, it is added with the epilogues. Tales from the Pizzaplex is a bit less direct. I think the safe bet, and the thing that makes the most sense to assume with Tales from the Pizzaplex, is the epilogues, probably in the game's timeline, similar to the Stitch Wraith, the connected stories, so the Mimic, the Storyteller, things like that, likely also taking place in the game's timeline. But some of the stranger ones are the ones that seem to have less of a connection to the Mimic, probably leave them aside for now. Because like I mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, as much as I'm just going to assume moving forward Tales from the Pizzaplex is in continuity, it's likely that we're looking at a Silver Eye situation, where a lot of the story is different, but the major players and major plot lines are still the same. So I wouldn't, if something seems like it would close the Pizzaplex for good, or like doesn't make any sense in the game's timeline, skip that part, pick and choose. But there isn't really an agreed upon stitch line for Tales from the Pizzaplex as of yet, at least as not that I know of. If there is, and I just don't know about it, let me know in the comments. But thank you for your question, Alex. And finally, we have a question from Braden, him. With Tales from the Pizzaplex being canon, how can Edwin and Henry create the original animatronics? I forgot I included this question. Braden, go to the beginning of this podcast. I answered it already in the beginning of talking about the Mimic, but the short of it is they can't. Either they both made the animatronics, which is weird, or that story isn't 100% accurate. So we have to pick and choose some things. Or Henry did make the animatronics and it's being retconned. But it seems like there's no way for them to have both made the original Fazbear Animatronics. That's my thinking. But thank you for your question, Braden. Sorry for prematurely answering it. But again, if you want your questions answered on the podcast, feel free to send them into Freddy Fazbear Pizza Podcast at gmail.com. It's in the description to copy and paste because it's a pain to type out. But until next time, as always, thank you for watching the Freddy Fazbear Pizza Podcast, where the pizza abilities are endless. We hope to enjoy your future patronage. Bye-bye for now.